Hi, it's Dwyer. It is September 12th, 2024. Nothing I say in this video should be construed as investment advice. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Let's just give a little perspective update at a time when Tesla is at an all-time high. At a time when Google's Alphabet, the parent company, is at an all-time high. Now, first, let's pop a myth. When Bitcoin was developed, people thought that this was some effort to get around the rules of society. Right? How could you call something money or use something as money when it wasn't issued by the government? There was an absence of regulation, right? You had third parties running exchanges, and they were unregulated, right? You had things like Silk Road come up, where people were doing transactions in Bitcoin that would be illegal if done in dollars, and in fact were illegal being done in Bitcoin. Well, just understand the myth that developed that Bitcoin was the product of young punks on dope, outsiders, renegades, people trying to circumvent Wall Street, and that it had to be squashed, right? Elizabeth Warren still has that point of view. That Bitcoin was some kind of alternative universe. I need for folks to understand that just the opposite is true. Right? The dialogue hasn't been a informed dialogue. Right? We seem to feel that, there's government issued currency, that we need to fight the fight, and we do, to prevent government from issuing a central bank digital currency. And then, of course, there's our currency of choice, private money, store of wealth, digital assets. Well, what's happened is profound. First off, people started to realize that unlike dealing in cash, where I could be involved in an illicit transaction with you, and I can give you cash, and as long as none of us is stupid enough to use a traditional bank, as long as there isn't an entity that could be hit with money laundering charges, if you were smart enough to have a safe in your house or under your house or in the backyard underground or offshore someplace, you could participate in cash transactions. I could give you value. We understood that what I was giving you was legal tender. There'd be no record keeping. You could give me the illegal goods. We understood that those allowed transactions, in other words, transactions using government-sponsored legal tender, were more surreptitious than doing a transaction in Bitcoin, where someone could look on the blockchain and actually figure out what was paid, when it was paid, and if they were smart enough, who was making the payment, what address to what Bitcoin wallet was used, etc. In other words, Bitcoin left a trail that cash did not. While the public was up in arms over Bitcoin, this was supposed to submerge the economy. This didn't have enough consumer protections. In actuality, Bitcoin left evidence. This is akin to criminals leaving forensic evidence behind. Bitcoin left forensic evidence behind. Right? Just understand. Well, let me tell you where the market has developed. Now you do have privacy coins out there. You do have coin mixing. Things are getting a little bit complicated. But understand, now you have the crypto community actually supporting the traditional finance community. Folks, they go hand in hand. The people using XRP are traditional banks. Has anyone figured this one out? Understand, most stable coins, at least as of December 12th, 2024, when this video is being made, are denominated in dollars. Right, folks? I would argue the biggest crutch that the dollar has right now, believe it or not, are these stable coins. Right? In fact, you have a new group of stable coins that are about to hit the market that actually promise you a rate of return. Think about that novel idea. I have a stable coin, and because the coin is invested in what? U.S. Treasuries. Can you support traditional finance more than that? Right? You're actually supporting the Treasury and bond market. Because these stable coins are actually investing in U.S. Treasuries to the point where Tether holds more U.S. bonds than the country of Germany, what once was one of the most vibrant economies in all of Europe. Well, just understand, because treasuries actually pay off a profit, now the stable coins are actually starting to share that profit with holders. So I have a stable coin. Why do I have a stable coin? Because there's so much volatility in crypto. The same volatility people complain about, welcome to free markets, that my stable coin is supposed to provide me with some stability. I have $10 worth of Tether. Guess what? Tomorrow I'll have $10 worth of Tether. Now we can question whether the value of the $10 is going to fluctuate. Right? But just understand, the reason I have $10 worth of Tether is because Tether took the money and invested it in U.S. Treasuries. So folks, we're talking about a lot of money. We're talking about China being slowly replaced as a big holder of U.S. bonds, U.S. debt instruments, by stable coins. How could you have a DeFi community that relies on stable coins, which are increasing in value, which of course are investing in, U.S. sovereign bonds? How could you view that outfit as anything other than supportive of the traditional finance status quo? Understand, now of course, the separation between traditional finance and decentralized finance has evaporated, because spot Bitcoin ETFs now are being managed by BlackRock, Fidelity. Understand, Tether's Wall Street banker, he is who Trump has nominated for Commerce Secretary. Right, so folks, in the media, we're talking about crypto as if it's new. Right, just understand, crypto is working hand in hand with traditional finance. Just understand, all this talk about BRIC nations coming up with a new currency flies in the face of stable coins, which are highly successful, right? Tether is very successful. Stable coins actually being denominated in dollars and buying U.S. sovereign bonds. Well, let's talk about a few other things, right, with regard to the BRIC nations. Now, I know many people are worried about the BRICS, right? After all, India and China are the countries with the highest populations in the world. During peaceful times, times when people aren't levying a lot of sanctions all over the place, Russia is actually the energy provider for Europe. Right, let's just think it through here. You want a vibrant part of the world that's growing by leaps and bounds, that, of course, has one of the biggest crypto marketplaces globally. Look at the Arab nations, right? Dubai, of course, is a big-time crypto capital. Of course, Saudi Arabia is diversifying away from energy. Well, what I want to do here is to also point to some headlines that fly in the face of this, supposed gap between the US dollar and BRIC nations. Now, you understand that the President-elect of the United States, Donald Trump, who has investments all over the globe, is busy building a mega resort right now in where? Saudi Arabia. A BRIC-aligned country. Right, folks? Far from being hostile to Saudi Arabia, Trump is building in Saudi Arabia. If I asked you to name me a prominent American businessman who has extensive business ties, in fact, he has a gigafactory in in China, right? A guy who knows President Xi, right? A guy who believes in free trade, believes in manufacturing products in China. Many of you would name Elon Musk. Right, folks? Elon Musk is the guy with Vivek Ramaswamy who Trump has put in charge of his Department of Government Efficiency. Right, we're supposed to be having some big war with China. At the same time, the president-elect is relying on one of the American businessmen who have the most extensive business relationships with China. Of course, Trump has also invited President Xi to his inauguration. What I want people to do, too, is to recognize that Lula right now is in bad health in Brazil. Bolsonaro, an international figure, right, a competitor to Lula, is very much analogous to Donald Trump, right? In Brazil, just like in the United States, there's been a lot of lawfare that's been used to quiet some political opponents. You might recall all the legal matters Trump was dealing with here in the United States during the election. Think about how preposterous it was. During the presidential election, during the presidential debates. Well, Bolsonaro is going through lawfare himself in Brazil. But just to understand, Bolsonaro is aligned with Trump. Bolsonaro is a Trump ally. The B in BRICS is for Brazil. Right? The point I'm making here, folks, is that the picture painted by the press is inconsistent with the idea that Trump is building facilities in BRIC nations. Trump, we have come to find out, when he was out of power, continued to communicate with Putin. You can imagine, given all that's happened, given that Zelensky is talking about, dialing back the war if Ukraine ends up in NATO. I don't think that's going to happen. But you can imagine that Ukraine-Russia war is probably going to dissipate next year. So let me just say, given the rise of crypto, dollar-denominated crypto, right? Given the rise of crypto in BRIC nations, right? Didn't Putin just announce that Bitcoin will be considered property in Russia? Given the rise of dollar-denominated stablecoins in BRIC nations, and given the business relationships, the win-win business relationships that Trump has with BRIC nations, given the fact that the power of a bank to prevent a sovereign nation from accessing its assets is going to be diminished greatly by the increased use of XRP in bank transactions, right? XRP is pretty agnostic, right? It's used in cross-border transactions. Just understand these press reports, in my opinion, don't fully reflect how crypto is literally helping the dollar and how crypto is helping traditional finance. Hell, it's helping government finance, right? We have an upside down government. We have 36 trillion or so in debt. Who's buying the treasuries? Who's buying the bonds? Folks, it's Tether. It's other stable coins, right? Let's just say the world is very different than what's being reported. Now let's address another thing. You heard me mention all-time highs, stocks like Tesla, stocks like Google, right? Just understand, the Buffett indicator indicates that the stock market is hopelessly overvalued, right? That's a historical indicator, right? Ignore the numbers at your own risk. Well, I want people to understand a few things. First, we're likely to have stocks dropping. You know, Tesla is uniquely situated. You have a lot of concentrated capital in the stock market right now, right? The Magnificent Seven is pretty much drowning out the rest of the room in terms of getting investment dollars. Don't fall into the trap of hearing that Alphabet, after a breakthrough in quantum computing, has hit an all-time high, of course at a time when Google is having problems with federal regulators, right? There's talk about, spinning off parts of the company. Understand the business Tesla's in. The idea of robo-taxis is so high risk that GM has waved the white flag and is out of that business. Right? GM issued a statement talking about the possibility of reputational harm. Right? You can imagine if robo-taxis roll out and you pick up the paper and you see that there was a bad robo-taxi accident on a highway where people were killed, their fatalities. Then you pick up the paper a few days later and you find out that there's another robo-taxi accident with fatalities. You could imagine the political outcry. You could imagine customers saying, there is no way I'm going to take a robo-taxi with my 5-year-old. There is no way I'm going to take that risk. You can imagine everyone's going to be demanding that the local politician in the area where a robo-taxi accident took place needs to shut down robo-taxis completely. And of course, you're going to have a group out there that just want to get rid of competition. So the regular taxi company is going to say, hey, these robo-taxis are out of control. Right? Cab drivers who sense the threat to their livelihoods are going to say, hey, shut down these robo-taxis. Folks, that's the risk that Tesla's facing. Let me also point out, too, and Ted Cruz has talked about it, you're going to start shutting down parts of government, and I believe this is long overdue. right? I don't want to kid anyone here. I believe government is in a bubble. When we talk about bubbles, right, you hear about the real estate bubble, the stock bubble. We should also talk about the government bubble, right? We need to look at the share of the GDP that government used to have back in, let's say, the Kennedy administration, and we need to ask ourselves why we're so far above that now. Right, folks? It's ridiculous. But I need for folks to understand it's different. If I'm Elon Musk and I'm making decisions for my company, even if they blow up in my face, right? Folks are going to look at me and they're going to say, well, that's a businessman trying to be innovative, taking big risks, right? No risk it, no biscuit. Sometimes when you take big swings, you're going to miss the ball. Right? That's different. We can respect that. Right? We can respect GM for getting in the robo-taxi market, then realizing, hey, this is not for us. Let's back out. Let's issue a statement. We can respect that, right? I'm sure shareholders are up in arms, but third parties can respect that. Now, it's different, isn't it? When suddenly a GM person is the head of a Department of Government Efficiency. We all have our pet projects in government that we enjoy, right? Many communities are financially supported by these pet government projects. Folks, I'm just telling you, the risk to Elon Musk's reputation in taking away the punch bowl is enormous, right? People are going to start to blame Elon Musk for shutting down their favorite government program, right? You're going to hear that Doge has made a recommendation to, slash some department by 20-30%. You're going to be watching TV and you're going to see some government workers and they're going to be upset and they're going to tell you that they worked for the government for years, did the job for years, and now either they've lost their jobs, and that's going to be a challenge, right? Because these folks are unionized. You're going to have union blowback. Or that people they loved, were forced into early retirement and things like that. Right, folks? The good work of popping the government bubble comes with a cost, doesn't it? Some of that cost is going to be reputational. Now, we're in an era where a lot of people are buying EVs. There are a lot of different types of EVs. There are a lot of hybrids out there. Right? I'm just telling you, as Elon Musk starts going through the federal budget and starts making recommendations to cut parts of government that are financially supporting certain areas, you're going to have another group of consumers saying, I want to buy an EV, but I don't want to buy an EV from Elon Musk. You're going to have another group. This group's been quiet until now. I think they've just enjoyed the increased power of their founder. But you're going to have shareholders saying, damn it, why can't Elon just devote his time to Tesla? Right? Or whatever other business Elon has, right? Starlink. Elon has a bunch of businesses, right? Boring Company. You're going to have pressure all over the page. I don't expect Elon to stay at Doge for longer than a couple of years. Right? If Vivek, who just ran for president, wants to be president in the future, don't get me wrong, I'm going to applaud government cuts. A lot of people are not. Right? Because there are going to be stories, there's going to be a downturn in economic spending that's being done right now by the government. You can imagine you have some private entrepreneurs out there who are relying on government contracts. And suddenly, a lot of those contracts are going to dry up. People are going to be laid off. Who are they going to blame? If they blame Vivek, that's going to hurt his ability to win a presidential race in 2028. Let me also point out, too, you have an excellent analyst online, Danielle DiMartino Booth. And she has been talking for a while now about how a recession might already be, with us, right? And how there are increasing job losses, right? No one's paying attention because we've been sidetracked with a presidential race, and of course, new parties in power. Congress is changing hands. People are optimistic with some change in vision, right? We're hearing that Doge has been created and we're excited. Now we're hearing that Bill Ackman and a bunch of other people are going to offer their input to government. Right, folks, understand nothing is more powerful than actual markets. Right? Nothing. And so, the job market right now, are you certain it's not weakening? Right, folks? Isn't the world different when people start losing their jobs? Right? I'm a baby boomer. My generation, wow, it feels like it's already over economically. Right? You understand AI is with us. You understand a lot of people are being let go. You have support groups here in the Bay Area of people who, have been let go by tech companies. Many of them are still in their 30s. Right? I talk with people. I represent folks in a divorce. And we have a frank conversation. And I sometimes have to tell clients, your wife hasn't worked for 10 years. The fact that she, went to Berkeley, the fact that she has this degree, doesn't mean that you aren't going to be on the hook based on your marital standard of living for spousal support, not just child support, but spousal support for several years. I have to tell them, hey, courts have broad discretion, particularly family courts. And of course, they see someone like your wife. She might be degreed. She may have worked for a few years before the two of you got married. But since she hasn't worked for 10 years, the court's going to give her several years of latitude in terms of applying for and finding a job. And even though she might have HP on her resume or Adobe on her resume, companies that were robust and vibrant a few years ago, that doesn't mean that she has the skill set right now to get a job at Google, Meta, etc., Apple, right? So, my point is this: be cautious. The press right now, the mainstream press has collapsed, in my opinion. Right? YouTube is balkanized. Right? You have a lot of different views, including the views being put forward in this video here. Right? There's no standardization. Right? Gone are the days of Walter Cronkite, Chet Huntley, people like that. Right? So, as a result, people don't realize that Tether is one of the biggest buyers of U.S. treasuries globally. Right? People don't realize that the BRIC nations are talking about their own currency, but, right now, stable coins favor the U.S. dollar. Right? That right now, in Trump's inner circle are people like Elon Musk, who have extensive business relationships with China, who's supposed to be our enemy. Right? Let's just say the news hasn't been completely informative. Let's also point out that the storm cloud should be obvious looking at the numbers, looking at the Buffett indicator. Right? Looking at the housing market, particularly the condo market right now in Florida. Right? People need to realize there is a distinct possibility that the stock market right now is a bubble. That the housing market right now is a bubble, that the government itself is a bubble, and that there are going to be repercussions even as Tesla and Alphabet are at all-time highs. Let me hear what you think. I see I've gone 30 minutes. Let me hear what you think in the comment section of this YouTube video. Thanks for stopping by.